Ever been stood up last minute? Not because she lost interest, but because her kid came first. One text, sorry. My kid has a fever. Rain check, your plans. Your energy, gone. It's not her fault, but you still pay the price. That's just one of 5 shocking reasons smart men avoid dating single moms, and reason number 4 is so explosive, it can wreck an entire relationship with a single message. So here's the big question. Why are more and more smart men walking away from single moms, not just marriage, but even dating? Stick with me, because today I'll break it down. And to be clear, this isn't an attack. There are amazing single moms out there. But compatibility is not the same as character. This is about risk, lifestyle fit, and why so many men quietly say, no thanks. Now, before we dive in, let me make something absolutely clear. Not every single mom fits what I'm about to describe. These are common challenges, not universal truths. If you're a single mom watching, this isn't a personal attack. It's simply an exploration of why many men hesitate. Think of it like this. If someone warns you that driving during a snowstorm is dangerous, that doesn't mean every single trip will end in an accident. It just means the risk profile is higher. That's what we're looking at today. The risk factors that smart men calculate before stepping into these relationships. So let's break this down into the 5 big reasons. Each one is important on its own. But when you put them all together, it paints a very clear picture of why the trend is only growing. Let's start with reason number 1. Reason 1. The schedule and energy are never just between 2 people. Dating in a normal relationship means managing 2 schedules. Your time, her time. And making them align, that's already tricky in our busy modern lives. But when you date a single mom, it's no longer 2 schedules. It's 3 or more. Hers, yours, and her child's anislos. That means every dinner, every trip, every weekend is subject to sudden change. A fever, a school event, a babysitter canceled at the last minute. One small change in the child's world can completely derail your world. I'll give you an example. A buddy of mine went out with a single mom. She was attractive, fun, and they had great chemistry. But out of their first 5 dates, 3 had to be canceled or rescheduled last minute. Why? Because something always came up with her kid. And look, he didn't blame her. She was being a good mom, but at the same time, he realized that he was expending way more emotional energy on rescheduling than he was on actually building a connection. The truth is, the relationship started to feel like flying an airplane through constant turbulence. The plane itself was fine, the pilot was capable, but the weather, the external factors made every flight stressful. That's what dating a single mom can feel like. Even if she's amazing, the unpredictability is built into the situation. Now let me ask you, have you ever had a date canceled on you at the very last minute? How did it feel? Frustrating, right? If you've ever been there, type "been there" in the comments. Because I know a lot of men watching have experienced exactly this. And that leads us directly to reason number 2. Reason 2. The asymmetry of priorities. You will rarely be number 1. This one is huge. And it's not about jealousy, it's about reality. A responsible single mom is always going to put her child first. And honestly, that's the right thing to do. If she didn't, you'd probably question her character. But here's the problem for men. When you enter that relationship, you have to accept that you will always be priority number 2 or 3. Think about what that means. It's not just about canceled plans. It's about emotional bandwidth. When she's exhausted, stressed, or emotionally drained, her child is still getting the best of her. What's left for you may be the scraps. I once spoke with a guy, 31 years old, who dated a single mom for nearly a year. He told me, I never felt like I was competing with her kid, but I did feel like I was a spare part. Every time we had an important moment, something came up. A homework meltdown, a phone call from school, a babysitter issue. It was like life kept telling me, you're not the main character here. And that's the key. You're not the main character in her story. Her child is. You are a supporting role. At best. Now, some men think they can handle this. They say, I don't need to be number 1. I'm okay with being second. But here's what usually happens. At first, it feels noble. You're patient. You're understanding. But over time, resentment builds. Because deep down, every man wants to feel like his woman sees him as the center of her romantic world. The metaphor I use here is simple. Imagine walking into a house that's already been fully decorated and lived in. You're welcome to stay. You even get a room. But it's never truly your house. You're just fitting into someone else's system. And for a lot of men, that dynamic slowly erodes the passion and connection that make relationships thrive. Now let me pause here for a second. If this resonates with you, hit the like button. It helps the algorithm. And it tells me that men out there need this kind of content. Alright, those are the first two reasons. Already, you can start to see why smart men take a step back from these relationships. But trust me, we're only just getting started. Reason 3. Finances and long-term commitments are more complex than you think. Dating is one thing. Marriage is another. And when you bring children into the equation, everything changes. Let's be blunt. Relationships already carry financial responsibilities. But when you date, or especially marry a single mom, you are stepping into a financial ecosystem that was created before you arrived. That means higher costs, more responsibilities, and sometimes even legal or social expectations that don't technically belong to you, but still affect you. I know a man, 38 years old, who told me about his experience. He was doing well in his career. He thought he was ready for a family. So when he met a single mom with one child, he embraced the challenge. He said, I was fine covering dinner, vacations, even some bills. But the moment we started talking about buying a house together, the numbers doubled. The emergency fund, the monthly expenses, the school costs. I realized my life wasn't just about building with a partner. It was about carrying the weight of a family structure I didn't create. Oh, now, some men can handle that. Others can't. But here's the reality. Whether you're ready or not, society often looks at you as if you're responsible. Even if you're not the biological father, people expect you to act like one. That pressure, spoken or unspoken, can be overwhelming. The metaphor I like to use is this. It's like jumping onto a moving train. You didn't lay the tracks. You didn't schedule the stops. But once you're on, you're expected to help fuel it, maintain it, and ride through whatever storms come. And if you're not prepared for that, it can lead to stress, financial strain, and ultimately resentment. Quick note here, none of this is financial advice. If you ever find yourself in this position, consult a professional who understands the laws in your country or state. But the point stands, the financial complexity is real. Now, let's talk about the one that most men underestimate. Reason number 4. Reason 4. Emotional baggage and the co-parenting ecosystem. This is the one I warned you about in the beginning. Because reason number 4 can turn a healthy, loving relationship upside down in a single moment. Here's the truth. When you date a single mom, it's not just you and her. It's you, her child. And whether you like it or not, the father of that child, or, in some cases, his family. Even if the relationship with the ex is over, the connection is permanent because co-parenting doesn't stop. And sometimes, that ecosystem can cause chaos. Picture this. You're having a great weekend. Everything feels peaceful. Then her phone buzzes. It's her ex. He wants to swap weekends. Or he's unhappy about something. Or he's showing up at the birthday party. Suddenly, the mood changes. Tension rises. Plans fall apart. I've seen it happen. A friend of mine was dating a single mom for almost 2 years. Everything seemed fine. Then, one Friday night, her ex texted to say he needed to switch custody days. It sounded small, but that one text meant their entire weekend trip had to be canceled. She was upset. He was frustrated. They argued, and in that moment, he realized, I'm not just dating her, I'm also at the mercy of someone I never signed up to deal with. That's the harsh truth. When you step into this dynamic, you're not only taking on her emotions, you're taking on the ripple effects of her past relationship. The metaphor? Think of love as a band. With two people, it's a duet. You set the rhythm together. But when you add kids, ex-partners, and extended family, it's like playing in an orchestra. One person misses a note, and the whole song sounds wrong. Now, can some men handle that? Sure, but many men don't realize what they're signing up for until it's too late. Let me pause here. If you've ever experienced drama with an ex-partner lingering in the background, share your story anonymously if you want in the comments. Because trust me, there are men watching who need to hear real-world experiences beyond just mine. All right, let's move into the fifth and final reason. Reason 5. Misaligned life goals, freedom versus stability. At first, this one seems simple, but in reality, it's one of the biggest deal breakers. Here's the truth. A lot of men in their 20s and early 30s are in expansion mode. They want freedom. They want to build their careers, travel, move cities, take risks. Meanwhile, most single moms are in stability mode. They need routine, predictability, and a steady environment for their child. That means school schedules, doctor visits, consistent routines, and long-term planning. Neither side is wrong. Both are valid, but the mismatch can be brutal. I'll give you an example. A young developer I know got an amazing offer to work abroad for 3 months. It was a career-changing opportunity. But his girlfriend, a single mom, couldn't uproot her child's life. She needed to stay grounded. They tried to make it work long distance. But eventually, the tension broke them apart. Not because they didn't care for each other, but because their life arrows pointed in opposite directions. And that's the essence of reason 5. You may want to climb mountains at sunrise. While she's holding a school calendar and planning next week's PTA meeting, both are noble missions. But they don't always align. So what happens? One of you has to sacrifice. And over time, that sacrifice builds into regret. Now, let me ask you, what do you value more right now? Freedom or stability? Drop freedom or stability in the comments. Because being clear on your answer can save you from years of frustration. So there you have it. 3 more reasons why smart men often walk away from dating or marrying single moms. Number 3. Finances and long-term commitments are more complex than they look. Number 4. The emotional baggage and co-parenting ecosystem can blow up even the strongest connection. And number 5. Misaligned life goals, freedom versus stability, often tear things apart. Even when the love is real. Together with the first 2 reasons, the picture is becoming crystal clear. But we're not done yet. Because in the final section, I'm going to recap all 5 reasons, share a few exceptions that actually work, and then give you 5 principles to follow if you still want to try dating a single mom. That way, you'll have the complete playbook. All right, let's take a breath and zoom out. We've covered a lot. So let me quickly recap the 5 shocking reasons why smart men are walking away from single moms. When you step back and look at it as a whole, the pattern becomes obvious. Dating a single mom often means unpredictable schedules, always being in second place, financial responsibilities that were already set before you arrived, the lingering presence of an ex, and life goals that may not point in the same direction. This isn't about blame. It's about clarity. These are built-in challenges that require a man to ask himself, am I truly prepared for this? Now, to be fair, not every story ends badly. There are rare, but real cases where everything works, where boundaries are respected, money is managed transparently, and co-parenting is handled with maturity. I've seen families where the new partner blends in seamlessly, almost like he had always been there. But let's be honest, those cases are the exception, not the rule. They demand discipline, patience, and a level of teamwork that even couples without kids often struggle to reach. So if you're a man considering this path, understand, yes, it can work, but it won't happen by accident. It will take planning, maturity, and more patience than you expect. And that leads us to the next part, because some of you will still say, okay, I get it, but I really like her. I want to try. If that's you, let me share 5 guiding principles. Think of them as your rulebook, your survival kit, to save you years of frustration. Principle 1. Demand transparency early. Don't tiptoe. Don't wait months. Ask the hard questions right away. What are her expectations? What's her child's routine like? How much time is realistically available for dating? Clarity in the first month can save you heartbreak in the 12th. Principle 2. Set a realistic timeline. Don't rush into stepdad mode. Give it months, sometimes years before you step into a father figure role. If she pressures you to bond instantly, that's a red flag. Relationships need time to prove stability before children get fully involved. Principle 3. Be crystal clear about finances. Money is already the #1 stress factor in relationships. Add a child, and it doubles. So ask, who pays for what? What happens in emergencies? What's the long-term plan? Don't let assumptions ruin trust. Write things down if you have to. Principle 4. Establish boundaries with the ex. This one is huge. You need rules about communication with the father of her child. Respect his role, but protect your peace. That means no surprise drop-ins, no constant texts at midnight, no blurred lines. If those boundaries aren't in place, the relationship will bleed stress. Principle 5. Audit yourself, honestly. Before you commit, ask yourself, do I have the time? Do I have the money? Do I have the emotional energy? And most importantly, am I emotionally mature enough to handle being second place without resentment? If the answer to any of those is no, then it's better to walk away now than to drag things out and hurt everyone later. Here's the bottom line. There is no universal answer. Some men thrive in these relationships. Some men crash and burn. The key is honesty. Honesty with yourself and with her. Don't romanticize the situation. Don't believe love alone will fix everything. It won't. Love matters. Yes, but so do logistics, priorities, and life goals. If your life arrows point in the same direction, it can work. If they don't, then the kindest thing you can do for both of you is to let go before resentment builds. At the end of the day, this isn't about rejecting women. It's about protecting your future. It's about making decisions that serve the man you're becoming. Because every choice you make today echoes into the man you'll be 10 years from now. So choose wisely and choose with courage. If this video hit home for you, do me a favor, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm that men need this kind of content, and it helps this message reach the guys who are struggling silently. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I'm dropping videos every week that challenge the lies society tells men about dating, marriage, and masculinity. And share this video with a friend. You never know, he might be about to step into this exact situation and needs to hear the truth before it's too late. Finally, drop a comment below. Tell me, which of the 5 reasons resonated with you the most? And do you want me to dive deeper into financial strategies or co-parenting dynamics in a future video? Until then, stay strong, stay sharp, and make choices that serve your future. Because you only get one life. Don't waste it walking down the wrong path.